What if I told you that Ferrari is already in trouble with a car that has not yet hit the track? Yes, the famous Project 678, the Ferrari of 2026, is under fire for internal leaks that point to structural failures before it was born. How serious is what is coming for the Scuderia? To understand Ferrari's current crisis, we must first look back and analyze without filters what happened during the 2025 season. Even before the first traffic light went out, there were already worrying signs that many decided to ignore due to the media glare of the signing of Lewis Hamilton. The arrival of the seven-time world champion was interpreted as the beginning of a new era, an expected resurrection, the definitive chapter of redemption for the Scuderia. But what ended up happening was exactly the opposite. The SF-25 was built on an ambitious premise, maintaining the best of the SF-24, which had already borne fruit in 2024, but adapting it to a more aggressive downforce philosophy and with a new suspension architecture. However, what was proposed as an evolution became a technical trap that was impossible to solve in time. One of the most serious structural errors was its extremely narrow operating window. What does this mean in practical terms? That the car only worked correctly under very specific conditions of temperature, fuel load, type of curve, and aerodynamic configuration. A temperamental car, as some engineers defined it. This is lethal in a championship with more than 20 races and changing weather conditions. The first sign of disaster came from the bottom of the car. The plank, that piece of technical wood placed at the bottom of the car to measure where due to contact with the ground, began to deteriorate more than normal. If wear is excessive, penalties follow, and that forced Ferrari to raise the height of the SF-25 beyond ideal. The direct consequence: loss of aerodynamic load, reduction in ground effect efficiency, and a less grippy car in fast corners. A forced technical decision that completely ruined the original design intention. But it wasn't just that. The switch to a front pull rod suspension, modeled after Red Bull and McLaren, was a risky move gone wrong. This system is difficult to tune and requires a perfect understanding between aerodynamics and mechanics. Ferrari did not achieve that integration. Under heavy braking, the car suffered from pitching, that pitching movement that destabilizes the car. This not only compromised cornering, but also made it impossible to keep the aerodynamic platform constant. Even the bouncing reappeared, the rebound that affected everyone so much in 2022, something that by this point should already be completely overcome. Hamilton encountered a car that did not respond as he expected. He tried to adapt his driving style, imitating Leclerc's to minimize problems, but confidence with the car did not come. In several races, especially under changing conditions, the SF-25 was directly uncontrollable. Strategic decisions did not help. Ferrari hesitated in the pits, was slow to react to the weather, and often left its drivers exposed. There were weekends where the car looked competitive on Friday, but fell apart on Sunday. Performance was inconsistent and frustrating. Leclerc, for his part, also suffered. There were races where his pace was excellent in qualifying, but his race pace plummeted. The difference between what was simulated in the wind tunnel and what later happened on the track was so great that the team itself began to distrust its development tools. The situation became so critical that Ferrari decided to abandon development of the SF-25 before the season ended. A decision that, although pragmatic, sent a devastating message. The car was hopelessly ill-conceived. It was in many ways a real-time autopsy. Everything that was attempted to be patched ended up exposing more bugs. And the worst thing is that, while all this was happening, the rest of the teams, especially McLaren and Mercedes, took the opportunity to continue evolving. In numbers, Ferrari closed the season in 4th place in Constructors' World Championship, very far from the initial objectives. But the damage goes beyond the points. Internal trust was broken, months of development were lost, and the Ferrari name was once again associated with frustration. It's not that the car didn't win races, it's that it couldn't even sustain a predictable performance line. And this context, this accumulation of errors and disappointments, is what makes the leaks that have just become known about the 2026 project even more disturbing. Because if Ferrari's future was built on the ashes of 2025, perhaps we are repeating the same cycle that has condemned the Scuderia in the last decade. With the 2025 season coming to a close, all eyes within Maranello have been directed to a single objective, Project 678. That is the internal name of the car with which Ferrari intends to assault the new technical era that begins in 2026. A car that not only symbolizes the change in regulations, but the last real opportunity to rewrite a narrative of failures that has lasted for more than a decade. But something is not working. For weeks, specialized networks, technical forums, engineering leaks, and even ambiguous statements from the Ferrari environment have raised an alarm signal. What was supposed to be the Scuderia's technological renaissance is showing cracks, and it hasn't even touched the track. And the worst thing is that this time we are not talking about baseless rumors, but about data leaked from the post-season tests, about internal analyses that, if true, put in check the most important project of the decade for Ferrari. The first leak that worries is structural. Reports indicate that the rear suspension design that Ferrari is testing for Project 678 has not yet passed dynamic validation tests, known as structural vibration tests. These tests are not a luxury, they are mandatory for the FIA to homologate the chassis. Without overcoming them, the car cannot even compete. Engineers hope to solve it with minor adjustments, but the problem appears to be in the very concept of how the suspension is connected to the gearbox, which could require redesigning entire areas of the car. And that, at this point in the calendar, is an absolute disaster. But the story doesn't end there. The second critical focus is aerodynamic. Ferrari would be trying to apply a hybrid solution between passive and active aerodynamics, a kind of controlled flexibility system in certain sections of the car's floor. This system, inspired by ideas from Red Bull and perfected by McLaren, seeks to slightly modify the aerodynamic flow depending on speed and load. The problem is that the results in the wind tunnel and CFD, computational fluid dynamics, simulations are not agreeing. In other words, what the computer says will work is not working when physically tested. That suggests that the mathematical model Ferrari has been working with could be miscalibrated. If that is true, it would be a very serious failure. The entire development of aerodynamics would be built on erroneous data. Added to this is a third, even more worrying leak, this time of a human nature. In recent weeks, 2 engineers in the vehicle dynamics area have received offers from other teams, one of them directly from Audi, which will officially debut as a team in 2026. The flight of talent is not new at Ferrari, but at this moment, in the midst of a regulatory transition, losing key pieces of the technical structure could sink any hope of a reaction. And the most serious thing is not that the engineers leave, but why they want to leave. Some reports point to internal frustrations, lack of clear direction and friction between departments, especially between aerodynamics and mechanical design. Internally, the environment is not the healthiest. There is tension in the corridors of Maranello. It was expected that Project 678 would be a logical evolution after the errors of the SF-25, but it seems that the technical team has opted for another jump into the void, a new, risky, ambitious concept, but which has not yet been proven to work either in the simulator or on the track. This is dangerously reminiscent of past mistakes. Years where Ferrari prioritized innovation over stability, where the urgency to differentiate ended up sacrificing reliability, where revolutionary concepts were imposed without a solid foundation of data, hoping that they would somehow magically work when the races came around. The result, as history has shown time and time again, is a car that never gets off the ground. The great irony is that Ferrari has no room for another mistake, neither media, nor technical, nor moral. Hamilton's arrival has put a magnifying glass on every movement of the team. And if in 2026 the Scuderia starts with a car with structural flaws, aerodynamic inconsistencies, and a lack of technical leadership, then we are not facing a new chapter, but rather facing confirmation that the cycle is broken from the roots. Do you think Ferrari can still find the right direction before the start of the 2026 season? Or are we witnessing the final collapse of an era that can no longer stand on its own? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.